Hello and welcome to another episode of Champagne Football, the show in which your hosts get drunk and slur their opinions on the footballing events of the past week. This time round, we've got Becky returning to us. So how you doing, Becky?
Doing well, happy to be back.
Brilliant. And as a special treat, we've got an expert in Korean football. This week round, it's Tom Clark. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, good, thank you. Nice to be here.
Brilliant. So, Becky, as ever, we always like to start comparing our drink to a football team. What are you drinking this week?
So I've got a nice glass of Banrock Station wine, which is near Adelaide in Australia, the winery. So I'm going to go with the Adelaide women's team. They didn't have a great season this year. They finished, I think, second last in the table. And, you know, clearly are a team that's building, trying to be better, but they're not quite there yet. And I would say that's the same with this wine. It doesn't kind of tastes like it doesn't really know what it wants to be yet. It's a bit sweet, a bit sour. I'm not the biggest fan, so I'm going to go with the Adelaide women on this one. I think Adelaide United, yeah.
Awesome. Seems like a very apt choice. And for me personally, I'm drinking Birra Moretti this week round, and we've had that on the episode before, so I'm just going to gloss over that and move on to Tom. What are you drinking, Tom?
I've got a lovely Hobgoblin Gold. Always a fan of all the different Hobgoblins, but this one particular. And I'm not going to compare it to a team, but if you've ever seen the label, and you guys can see it right now, It is the absolute spit of Neil Warnock. And although it's much nicer than I would imagine Neil Warnock would taste. So, yeah, but we'll stick with Neil Warnock as a Hobgoblin.
Yeah, I think for anybody who gets a chance to look at the label, the noses are absolutely identical. They've really got that. Anyway, so moving on. The reason we've got Tom here today is that, he spent a little bit of time in his life in Korea, and he knows a lot about that league, which is obviously going to be returning to our screens, or hopefully our screens, certainly sooner than any European football. So if we can hear a few words about what's going on over there, Tom.
Yeah, so it starts up on Friday the 8th with Jeonbuk, who are the three-time reigning champions, taking on Suwon Blue Wings in the first game of the season, and that will be on at 11 a.m. British time. It's not yet known if it's going to be shown on TV or online over here, but I did speak to the broadcast partner, Sports Radar, who are based in Switzerland, and they said they've had a lot of interest across Europe about showing it. And they've already got deals confirmed with Croatia and some other Eastern European companies, but the marketing man wouldn't tell me who else has confirmed yet, but did say at the beginning of next week they will release the details of where it's going to be shown. He did let slip that ESPN are showing interest in America, but whether they're going to offer them any money or not is another question, because the Korean Baseball League starts up next week as well, and ESPN asked for the rights to show it for free, only going to offer the money if it drew in numbers and advertising figures, and Korean baseball rightly said no to that. Hopefully that means that they're not going to do the same with the football, because there would be, it's worth watching, you know, if it's on and there's nothing else on, not just if there's nothing else on, but if it's on while there is nothing else on, it's worth watching. And the late afternoon evening games will be on at about 11 o'clock in the morning UK time. So, you know, you get up on a Saturday, on a Sunday, and watch a lunchtime game. I'm maybe not suggesting the 6:30 a.m. Korean lunchtime games, but the Korean evening kickoffs are perfect here, in my opinion. And I will certainly be tuning in, if nothing else, to the highlights if we really can't get anything else.
What are some of the restrictions or measures they're putting in place to get this league restarted?
So every player had a test done, would have been yesterday, because the results were out today. Well, actually in Korea, the results come out within about 4 hours. So it could have been done on the day. But as far as I'm aware from the newspaper reports that were coming in, they were tested on Thursday and their results were released on Friday, with every single person coming up negative. And even in the whole of Korea yesterday, there were no new cases of COVID. If people who had caught it in the country, they had 2 new cases, and they were both from people who had brought it in from another country. So all the players will be tested every week, and if anybody from a team does test positive, then their entire squad will go into a 2-week quarantine. But of now, it means everybody is clear, everybody is good to go, and they'll be tested again next week. There are no fans yet, but that might change in a few weeks because life in Korea is getting back to some sort of normality, and people are going out and about and going to restaurants and bars and socializing again. There are a few odd game day rules which we really don't know how they're going to work, though. The main one, which one of the players has already questioned, is that they've been told that they can't talk when they're on the pitch.
What?
They can't spit, which they've said is fine, but they can't talk. The managers are allowed to talk, but the managers have to stay in their box with a mask on. So the managers will have to be doing all the man on type of shouts, but I can't see that how that's going to work. And obviously the referee has to talk to the players, and the players have already said this is crazy, but supposedly that's one of the rules.
That seems just bizarre to me, but I guess I can understand why they're trying to put in these restrictions, but I can't see them lasting. I wonder, over here we've been told that players are going to be training with masks on. Have they been doing that over there yet, or will they maybe give them to referees when they're refereeing?
The referees won't have them on, but in Korean culture, it's so common to wear a mask, and it's not always to protect yourself. It's even if you just had a cold, sore throat, anything like that, and you would go to work, you would wear a mask, as supposedly that would protect the other people you work with. The science behind it is questionable, as a lot of the cheap masks you get probably only actually work for about 6 or 7 minutes. And I've had this argument with my wife for months now. She can't understand why when I go to the supermarket I'm not wearing a mask, and I point to, like, the World Health Organization research saying that you only need it if you're in the hospital or if you're contagious, if you have it or something like that. But all Koreans have been wearing them everywhere you go. When they had the election 2 weeks ago, you weren't allowed to vote if you weren't wearing a mask. It was as simple as that. You can't go into a polling station. So all the players would have had them on, and they have been training for a couple of weeks. They've had some friendly games behind closed doors. They had like inter-squad friendlies, and then I know in the last few days they have had some friendlies against other teams, but the players won't be wearing masks or anything like that, and the referees haven't either.
So moving on to what happens on the field. For England, this is a potentially whole new experience if it does get aired over here and if people start watching. How do you think the English public will react to it? And if you could compare some teams maybe to English teams to kind of help us get a grasp of how to understand this league.
The first thing I think is you need to not compare it to the Premier League. Yes, we can compare the teams, which is fine, and I've got a whole list of those that we can do. But if you're going to watch it, don't watch it expecting to see Premier League quality. But if it's a different game, when you imagine Son Heung-min at Spurs, he's that typical Korean player. But obviously he's the best. But he's the typical, he's hardworking. He comes off the pitch and he's absolutely exhausted. That's your typical Korean player. They get absolutely beasted in training. They are super, super fit. Yeah, they're not as technically good. And one of the things I have thought when I've watched it is, okay, they're not as technically good as Premier League players. They probably are as maybe the bottom half of the Championship, and they are better than League One. But I think some of the better teams in League One might beat a K-League team because of the physicality. And that isn't a big part of the Korean game, of big and strong. And the referees are quite they're quite whistle friendly when it comes to fouls. Things that we would look at in England and think that's not a foul play on. And having played against, and now I'm about to stereotype an entire nation of players, but having played against Korean players, in my experience, they do look for a foul a lot more than an English player would. And I know it is a big stereotype, but I have played with, in Korea for 10 years with a lot of different Korean players, and it is different. It's not as physical. But if you just enjoy it for itself and don't always compare it, then you can enjoy it. If you go into it and you're going to compare everything you see to Liverpool and Man City, that's not going to help. But if you just put that to one side and you watch it, it's football, and it's good football, and you'll see goals, you'll see goalkeeping howlers, you'll see, you know, some beautiful passing football, athletes, and it's live football. What more can you want?
Yeah, don't worry, Tom. I'm sure they stereotype you as the classic English Sunday League shithouse anyway. So
Absolutely, most definitely did. Yeah, I had a bit of a reputation in the league. That's
So, Tom, if we do get a chance to watch it over here, what team do you support, and who should I get behind?
Okay, well, what team do I support is there's never been an easy one for me, because I've always gone to the games as a neutral, really, and I can name like 3 teams that I have watched more than others. So the first team I ever went to see was Incheon United. Now, nobody wants to support Incheon. Incheon are the West Ham of Korean football. They're one of the oldest teams. They've never won the league in the 37-year history. They've come second, better than West Ham. They've only ever come third. They always end up in a relegation battle, and they always just manage to survive. But they also think they're much bigger than they are. They think, you know, they have rivalry with Suwon and FC Seoul. But to Suwon and FC Seoul, Incheon mean very little, but Incheon feel that they mean a lot to them. The only reason I have a soft spot for them is because it was would have been 2009, and it was the first K-League game I went to, and it was before I could read Korean properly, and it was about an hour and a half away from where I was living, and 3 of us went down there. We got there, it's Saturday, it's 3 o'clock, and there was nobody around, and we're like, wow, we realised that K-League didn't get big crowds, but this is a joke. And then we got closer to the stadium, and then I realised that actually what I thought was Saturday was actually Sunday when it was written in Korean. But so we were gutted. We were at the stadium. There was no game to go and see. Spent an hour and a half getting there, and we all had like these horrendous hangovers. But we got there, and we were just having a look at the stadium. It's a massive stadium. It was built for the some Asian games. Huge running track, huge stadium, and it was unlocked. And so we just walked in, and we were just walking around the stadium. We had a race around the athletics track, and then we wandered into the bowels of the stadium. We sat in the changing rooms, and you just walked into the trophy room, very empty trophy room, but trophy room nonetheless. And it was a lot of fun. And then we did actually make the 3-hour round trip back the next day to go and watch the game, and they were dreadful, but we went. But that was the only time I've actually seen them live. So I do still have a soft spot for them. And the other team that I enjoy, and I always look out for their results, is Songnam FC, because I lived in Songnam for not for as long as I lived in other places, but I lived there for a year. I went to a lot of games that season. They were a Division 2 side at the time. They're actually historically one of the better teams. But they were in the second division, and it was good, fun atmosphere, and I enjoyed it. So I would say I look out for Songnam more than anybody else. But there are other teams that I like, and Ulsan I really enjoy Ulsan because they are basically the Tottenham. They are what Spursy is all about. They last season they didn't win the league, and it was properly throwing it away. It is the epitome of Spursy. 2 games to go. They were playing Jeongbuk, who were the team in second. All they had to do not all they had to do. If they'd beaten Jeongbuk, then they win the league. 1-1 draw, that's okay. Jeongbuk are a good team here. But then last game of the season, they're at home, but they are against their biggest rivals, Pohang. And the thing is, the league was so tight that even if they lost, they could still have won the league. But they didn't just lose, they lost 4-1, including a 91st minute penalty. And actually the Pohang goals didn't really make a difference because they lost it on goals scored, and they lost it by 1 goal. And they are just the epitome of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and they've got these amazing, beautiful, beautiful kits. They have the best kits, some of the best kits since like 90s Italian football. So Ulsan are a team you could get behind for. But for you, Becky, you're going to have to go Suwon because they have a Canadian. So you have to go Suwon. They are not. They are an immensely dislikable team.
I meant United.
That's what I wanted to hear.
But they have a Canadian, so there you go.
Well, I'm in then.
So, like, who's currently the best team in the league then? Jongbuk. Without a shadow of a doubt, Jongbuk have won 3 in a row, 7 titles in the last 11 years. So they haven't quite done it in the Champions League, in the Continental tournament yet. The 1 year they've won 6 in the last 7, and the 1 year they didn't win the K-League, they won the Champions League. I think it was 2016. But other than that 1 year, for a team that's dominated Korean football, they haven't done as well in Asia as they should have done. But yeah, they're definitely the team to beat. And if you're choosing a new team, don't choose them. That's boring. I'm definitely going to choose them. I suffer enough supporting Arsenal. I'm going to choose a team I'm going to glory hunt shamelessly this time
If
now.
you're an Arsenal fan, you should go for FC Seoul, and that's because they play in a big, empty stadium with.
Here we go.
They have an ex-Arsenal player in Park Chu-young who is not very good, and neither team should have signed. And also, FC Seoul do not play where they were originally founded. They have moved a few times. Okay, Arsenal have only moved once, but they have moved, and they play where they shouldn't be playing. And best of all, the Korean nickname translates as FC Immoral.
Oh, how? The thing.
I thought he was being very self-depreciating, like, insulting Tottenham and comparing that. And I was like, oh, he's doing all my hard work for me. But I knew there was something to come.
It was coming.
Yeah. Tom, for me, when I try and discover a new league, it's often the players who excite me the most. I'll tune in to watch an individual. So who are the best players currently in the league, or the most exciting footballers?
Well, Korean players, there's Kim Bo-kyung, who plays for Ulsan. He's an attacking midfielder. He plays for the national team. He had a good World Cup for Korea, obviously, in Russia. I like him a lot. He's number 10, and he's well worth watching. And actually, it's very odd, this one, but he now plays for Jongbuk, but last season he was on loan to Ulsan. So imagine this, you got 2 teams going for the league, and the team in first loan a player to the team in second. But not just that, he then goes on to become player of the year. So that was Kim Bo-kyung, so he's the reigning MVP, as they call them in Korea. And he used to play for Cardiff as well. He played in the Premier League for Cardiff. He didn't quite make it here. It was just a little bit above his level, but he's a Korean international as well. And he's gone back to Jongbuk now. So whether he plays in the same position, because they've played a couple of Champions League games, and they played him in a different position to where he played for Ulsan. So that's, if he gets going, he's worth watching. And that's the Korean players, and also the Korean goalkeeper who had he had a brilliant World Cup. Do Hyun-woo, he's just moved to Ulsan this season. His World Cup wasn't his typical form. He had an exceptional 2-3 weeks at the World Cup, which he thought might get him a big move to Europe, and it didn't, because people had scouted him throughout the whole season. But he's still Korea's best goalkeeper, and the best goalkeeper in the league. As for the foreign players, there's Australian Adam Taggart, who's at Becky's team Suwon, and he will be challenging for Golden Boot for sure. He's a good player.
He's a really good player, yeah.
Yeah. And Adriano, who is one of quite a few Brazilians, he's come back into the league this season. He's going back to FC Seoul, where he's played before, and that's a good signing for them. He was good for them first time round. And there's two European players, well, one European, one South African, but they both moved from European clubs. And it's Bjorn Jonsson, who's a Norwegian American. He's a Norwegian international, and he was playing in the Eredivisie last season. I can't remember who it was for off the top of my head, but he had a decent goal scoring record. And another one who's moved from, I think again it was from the Eredivisie in Holland, and he's a South African now. If Yup is listening, he's going to pull me up on my pronunciation, but it's Lars Veldvik, I think it is, and he's a big, strong target man, and those players do well in Korea because I'm just saying the Korean general player isn't a big, strong, strapping centre back marking them, but with the foreigner rule, nearly all foreigners that come into the league are attacking midfielders or strikers, and so you bring in this big South African or Norwegian target man, and they can often bully defenders. And one of the Brazilians, Felipe, who plays for oh blimey, it's just escaped me who he played. But he's just got promoted. He's a big, strong target man. It's Guangzhou, that's who he plays for, and he's not your typical fancy Brazilian player. He's just a beast of a man who will just destroy defenders who are half a foot smaller than him.
Becky, any more thoughts on this subject?
I mean, for me, at this point, I'm pretty hooked, and I really hope that we get a chance to watch it over here because, I mean, not only are we all craving football, but it sounds like there's some storylines that we can really get behind as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. Tom, just say again, when do we expect it to start?
It's Friday the 8th, and the first game is at 11 a.m. on Friday. So if it's on, then it's definitely worth catching the first game. It'll be a good one as well. Jeonbuk v Suwon is a bit of a derby, or as Korean call them, a super match. It's their term for derbies, and say three times champions going up against Suwon, who are decent, mid-table, top half table. They'll give them a game, first game of the season for sure.
Brilliant. I'll set my alarm nice and early, so I'm up at 11 o'clock, which is becoming.
Yeah, that's way too early for you, Hal. Way too early for you.
I mean, it might as well be 6 a.m. That time is just lost to me.
Well, on Saturday, 6:30 a.m. is the first game, but I wouldn't suggest setting your alarm for that. It's fun to watch the football. 6:30, not sure.
It's all right.
Have you even gone to bed by 6:30?
That's what I was going to say. I might still be up, but I grew up in New Zealand, so I'm used to setting the alarm for the middle of the night kickoff. So maybe it'll be a bit of a throwback for me.
So Tom, looking more towards the UK, you're a Spurs fan, as we've touched on. Pochettino made some comments recently. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was BT were doing a watch along, and it was the Spurs Ajax second leg semi-final from last season. Obviously, the greatest comeback in football, and by far the best European League semi-final. Much better than the Liverpool game the day before. But he was very emotional about it. He was wearing the same shirt that he wore that night. He was speaking to Jermaine Genius and Jake Humphreys after it, and he was just saying, his love of Spurs and how he feels it's unfinished business, and he would like to come back to the club one day, and he thinks he will go back to the club one day to win things, and we'd love to have him. He, most Spurs fans were gutted when he left, and it's not to say you don't get behind your new manager, and
even you could get behind Mourinho.
He's your manager. You have to. You have to. You have to. You get behind your new man and you support him. And then when he does leave, whether that's in a year, 2, 3 years, and no matter what level of success he's had, if Pochettino's still available, you'd take him in an absolute heartbeat.
Yeah, I do understand that. I mean, when he was associated with Tottenham, I always felt a pang of jealousy because he is a brilliant manager, and that's undeniable. And I think wherever he ends up, hopefully not Tottenham, hopefully not Newcastle, but hopefully not Manchester United either. But, as long as he ends up away from the Premier League, I wish him the best because he is a brilliant manager. I do wonder, I feel a certain amount of cynicism about his comments. I mean, you mentioned him wearing the same shirt. I mean, he must have been aware of that. I don't know. That seems like, dressing for the cameras. And also the fact that he's still getting paid by Tottenham. I don't know what you could, maybe he's been sort of, if you want to pick up your wages, you got to say something nice about the club. So maybe I'm just being cynical.
I would say you were. Having read his I'm not sure if it's autobiography or biography, the book The Brave New World that he did with Guillaume Balaguer a couple of seasons ago. You can just tell like he loves the club, and him and Daniel Levy, it wasn't like a chairman manager normal relationship. It was a very close one. They took holidays together, and I think Levy doesn't give interviews, doesn't say much in public, and he has said it is one of the hardest decisions he's ever had to make, and one of the hardest things he's had to do was sacking him. And I just think they're friends, to be honest. I think Pochettino would come back because one, he loves the club, but two, it's his friend is running it.
Now it'd be interesting to see what does happen. I think maybe there's an element of a global pandemic is changing people's perspectives, and maybe he's getting very nostalgic about that time right now.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly could be. And he is still on the payroll. So if Mourinho did leave, you got a new man there waiting to come back in. Plenty of Italian clubs have done that in the past. They put a manager on gardening leave and then bring him back in later down the line in the same season. That's happened a lot in Italian football. So could happen here.
I've run out of things to say on it. You got anything else to add, Becky?
No, I don't. I mean, Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, giving us all your knowledge on the Korean League and on Poch, of course, as well. Personally, I mean, like I said before, I really hope we get a chance to watch it, especially given the chance that we actually get a chance to know those players and those teams with no other distractions right now as well.
Yeah, I think it's that, that old saying, if you build it, they'll come. Like if they put it on TV, people will watch it. If it's available to watch without having to sign into a betting website, which is possible, Bet365 have done those things before where if you have an account with them, you can watch a live stream. I mean, I would, but I don't think that's how you get neutrals. People who don't know anything. That's not how you do it. You do it by making it freely available. Even if the K-League were to do it themselves and give it away via their YouTube channel, people would watch it. I think just, maybe not everybody would watch it 11 o'clock on Friday for the first game, but on Saturday there's a game at 11 o'clock. On Sunday there's a game at 11 o'clock. And sometimes I think we do have too much football on TV, so maybe less is more. And if you have one game or two games live a week, that's something to look forward to. You wake up on a Saturday morning, have a fry up, a cup of tea, and watch a bit of football at 11 o'clock. What's not to love?
That sounds perfect to me, because that's exactly what I used to do growing up in Vancouver as well. We always had Sunday morning football on, and my dad would make a full English breakfast and we'd watch football. So I feel like I'd get a chance to recreate that now.
Yeah, exactly that. And people of my age, and basically anyone in their 30s in England grew up watching Football Italia on Channel 4. And the Gazzetta, the highlights show, which be completely alien to you guys, is on Saturday morning, but it would be showing the previous weekend's games. So you would see one live game on the Sunday, and you might know the scores, but you wouldn't actually see the highlights from that weekend's game until the following Saturday. And I've been talking to my friends about it because there's been a bit of a nostalgia trip this week with some hidden tapes released on YouTube. And it's these highlight shows that you would either get up really early on a Saturday morning, and I can't remember what time it aired. It might have been about 9 o'clock in the morning. And I think I always used to have football training. So it would be, you would record it on the video player and come back from football training, and there'd be, an hour-long highlight show. And even if the K-League did that, even if they just put out a weekly highlight show, I think they would get an audience. And one thing they really should look to do is put it out in English. As fun as Korean commentators are with their over-the-top screaming and what we call Konglish, so you don't shoot in Korean, it's shooting, and it's not a and it's lots of things like that. It's lots of English words slightly changed to Korean and shouted very, very loudly at you. It's not the commentary we're used to, and it is fine for a game. but it gets old soon. And if they could put it out with a bit of English commentary over the top of it, people would watch it.
Yeah, as the weeks go by, I feel more and more desperate to watch some live football. Originally, as you said, like there's so much, it's so saturated that you're kind of happy to have the break. But now I spend every night just YouTubing old Arsenal highlights from the glory days, and I'm watching 25-minute highlight videos of a 1-0 win over Leeds from 2001. So I gotta just enjoy some live football.
Yeah, something live, something you don't know what's going to happen. Even you're going back and watching these old games, even if you don't know what's going to happen, it's not this, for me anyway. It's not the same as a live event. It's not just been football. I've rewatched some cricket. I've watched an entire day's worth of golf, and luckily for me, I'd actually forgotten who won it, so it was like watching it for new. It was can't even remember which one. I think it was like the 2014 Open, or whatever it was, and that was fun because it felt like it was new, but something live, anything live, and I really, really hope it gets aired.
Yeah.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your thoughts with us.
Absolute pleasure, anytime.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom.
Cheers, guys.
Well, this has been a really great episode of Champagne Football. I know I speak for Hal as well. We've learned a lot about the Korean Football League. Tom, thank you again for joining us, and hopefully we'll be back next week with more exciting content for you.
Bye-bye.